Okay, so for this set of arguments, you are practicing your skill in isolating statements first, and then isolating premises and conclusions. So I'm first going to go over the bracketing for argument 4, and remember, you should have tried this on your own. So did you bracket each of the statements in here? If not, pause the video and do that. I'll go ahead and go through the thinking that I used to get to the answer. So I've got stem cell research causes harm in terms of human dignity, and so that's one statement actually there. Now I do have to look at and, because maybe I'm getting a list, but I noticed that after and I have anything that causes harm in terms of human dignity is wrong. So I realize I have a statement here and I have another statement right here. Consequently, stem cell research is wrong. So I have another statement here. You could also put the opening bracket around stem at the beginning, or just right here to open up the word at the beginning, or right in front of the word stem. You don't have to include that conclusion indicator in that case, but that's only because the indicator is at the beginning of the statement. If consequently we're in the middle of the statement, you could not put the bracket around the word consequently. All right. So I've got 3 statements. So as you can see, this is a new skill to develop. You have to use the definition for statement given in the module. You bracket those things that are considered declarative sentences that can be, in theory, categorized as true or false. So I've got 3 statements. Now I'm going to look for indicator words. The only indicator word I see is consequently, and I remember that typically that tells me a what is coming, a conclusion. So I'm going to label that with a C. That's not an O. I said that you should always have the label at the beginning and above the statement. It has to be the first 2 or 3 words. I chose to put it here just because this is just a conclusion indicator. If you put the C here, that's fine, but most of the conclusion is here, and I'm still at the second word of the statement, so it's fine. It's still at the beginning and above. By process of elimination, since I know I'm working with simple arguments right now and that all statements have a function, I can deduce that statement 1 is a premise and statement 2 is a premise. When I reread the argument as a whole, remembering the definition for argument, I use my college level reading comprehension skills and skills in argument analysis and everything that I've learned to decide that I have correctly marked this up. Okay, so what's the pattern here? P, C. The diagram would be S1, a premise, plus S2, another premise. So this one works jointly with this one to advance or to support S3, a conclusion. Next, pause the video if you haven't worked on argument 5 yet. Remember, use it or lose it. You got to create those new brain cells. If you're just watching me do this, you're not doing what it takes to learn. So make sure you're stopping and trying on your own. All dogs are collies. So that's a statement. Statement 1. This implies that Snoop Dogg is a collie. Statement 2. He is a dog after all. 3. So again, we are not evaluating this argument. That means we don't care whether or not the statements are really true or false. We just want to know what are their statements and what is the function of the statements in the argument. So I get one indicator word, and that is after all. Typically, conclusion and premise indicators come at the beginning of a statement. In this case, that's at the end. But the after all is functioning as an indicator for statement 3. And in that case, of course, you know it's going to be a premise indicator, as I told you, after all. And it's in your notes if you were here in class when I told you to write that from the whiteboard. Now, there is a conclusion indicator in statement 2. Did you spot the conclusion indicator in statement 2? So that statement, the conclusion indicator was this implies that. So I'm going to put a C here because the meat of the statement is Snoop lying as a collie. I'm still at the first 2 or 3 words where I'm beginning my label, so that's okay, and it's above the statement. If you put your C over here, that's fine. If you put it here, that's fine. Here is fine as well. First 2 or 3 words and above the statement is where you label a given statement. So by process of elimination, given the definition for argument, the knowledge that this is a simple argument and all statements have a function, I can infer that this is another premise. So the form for this, or the pattern for this one, is P, C, P. The diagram will be S1, a premise, plus S3, another premise, work together in an attempt to support S2, a conclusion. Now notice we aren't clarifying arguments in this practice item. All we're doing is analyzing them, excavating the pattern, and creating the diagram for the argument. Now, what we are doing is we could go on to clarify these arguments if we wanted to, and what we've done here is we've applied content principle 1, which is to what? Isolate premises and conclusions. But that's what we're focused on in this activity, in this practice item, because that's the core skill you have to clarify arguments and, of course, to evaluate them. But right now, we're not fully clarifying arguments. We're just analyzing the arguments, trying to see what the different parts are and how they hang together. All right, so if you haven't done argument 6 yet, go ahead and do it now. All right, so we've got, if you take a logic class, you are going to learn a lot about arguments. Look at your notes from the whiteboard from day 5. If you are in my intro class, day 6 in ethics. What did I tell you about if-then statements? They are conditionals. What did I tell you you should not do with them? Did you look at your notes? I hope you didn't chop this in half. There should not be a bracket here. There should not be a bracket here, based on the lesson that and the point that I told you to write down in your lecture notes. So that's statement 1. It's a conditional. The next statement is you aren't taking class. So really, there's a typo there. So I could have said this class or logic class. Or actually, see if I meant to say you aren't taking a logic class. I apologize. So I should say you aren't taking a logic class. Again, this may be a bad argument or a good argument. The premises may be true, they may be false, they may not really lead to the conclusion, but we're not focused on that right now. We're not evaluating, we're only analyzing. So then we've got a third, so this is statement 2. Then I've got, I just don't think it's possible that you know, well, if we were clarifying this would get crossed out, right? It's repetition. You know anything about arguments. So the statement really begins over here. If you want to put the opening bracket over here for these reasons, you can. When the indicator word is at the beginning of the statement, I tend to leave it out of the bracketing, but it's up to you. You can put the opening bracket up here. So this is statement 3. The meat of it begins right here. Okay. So now, do I have any indicator words that I can use as a clue? Remember what I told you to write down in your notes about if. I told you that's not a premise indicator, it's only a conditional indicator. So all we know is it's a conditional. Statement 2, don't know what that is. Now, look at statement 3, for these reasons. What did I tell you is a synonym for reasons? Premises. We went over this one in class. For these reasons means, here comes my premises, For these reasons means I've already given you my premises. I already gave them to you. Here comes my what? Conclusion. So again, this says I've already given you my premises. For these reasons, I've already presented them to you. Now let me give you my what? Conclusion. So by process of elimination, we are going to say that this is a premise and that this is a premise. Again, we're not clarifying, so we're not getting rid of excess verbiage or anything like that. So the pattern would be P, C, and the argument diagram would be S1, a premise, plus S2, a premise, are used to support S3, a conclusion. If you are confused or not understanding, you may need to reread the lesson, the first argument module lesson, reread it, and take maybe some Cornell notes on it. You may need to go into the in-class folders for day 5 and try to do those items that you did in groups on your own. You'll need to look at all the stuff that we did in class on day 5 or day 6 if you're in my ethics class, to see the examples that I gave you. Are you using the reading, the lessons? Are you using the notes I tell you to take? And are you using the examples that I have given you to make sure that you really understand things?